Boom. We got 6 out.
All right, we're doing emergency pod numero dos, which I think we had to do because if not, I don't know what you would do with all of your excitement over cashing Brady to the Bucs. So how are you? Here's my question: how are you going to spend all that money on toilet paper?
I think I already spent it on iPads for my girls today. So
Did they showed up today?
They did show up today. Yeah, man, it's. I think my wife is going to be instantly relieved by the the attention givers that are the iPads.
So your big move, having been quarantined for a few days, is to buy iPads for your kids. Mine has been that I have not really worn like more than 3 different articles of clothing. Like I've worn this same shirt, this same button-down shirt for all of the camera-facing stuff, and then other than that, it's like, what am I even doing here? I feel like a caveman.
Yeah, it's been. Yeah, it's certainly one of those things where you wonder like how long you'll be able to like get by doing certain things. So conserving food, conserving clothes, all that kind of stuff, probably smart.
I would agree. I haven't been very good at conserving food, though. You know this about me. I can eat far too much. Let me ask you this. You said you were like, hey, Tampa Bay, it makes a ton of sense. Here are all the reasons why. You've had a chance to think about it. Are you still fully on board with this being the right football move for Tom Brady? Like, was this his best, his optimal path?
Uh, I don't know. I think so. I mean, Brady wasn't the the player I think that New England wanted to move forward with, and I don't think New England was the team that Brady wanted to move forward with. The Chargers, as I said before, like I think there's too much like uncertainty and too much Chargerism to them. The fact that they just get in their own way too much, and the head coaching position is less stable, than Tampa Bay. So I do think that Tampa was the right choice for him. It makes me wonder though, like I don't think that this makes them the favorite in the NFC South, and so that it does present a challenge still for Brady though.
Okay, that's my thing. If you didn't go to a place where you're now the favorite in your own division, like how can that be the smartest move? How would the smartest move not have been to go back to New England if where you're going makes you all of a sudden have to battle just to win your division? Doesn't that seem counterintuitive? Like even if he had gone back to that New England team, as bad as they were, they're still the favorite to win that division, even with the Bills doing some nice things, right? Or am I like totally off base? I think that's very sound logic.
Yeah, but it's sort of boring, right? I mean, if you're Brady, like every single year you get to 12 wins and um, you win that division, you usually get a bye. It's not that tough, and then at the same time, like they're clearly the number 3 team in the AFC at best. So I don't know really if that appealed to him. You know what I'm saying? I think if Brady were to even get to like let's say the playoffs and win a division with Tampa Bay, it'd be a much more satisfying endeavor.
Maybe. You know
what I'm saying?
Still,
like
yeah.
it's just probably boring for him to play the AFC East over and over and over again for 20 years. It just doesn't seem like a particularly fun like exercise at this point.
Yeah, I think the boredom part is probably legit. Like being 40 plus, you played in the same place for 20 years, and you've dealt with the same. It was interesting. People were all talking about how Bill Belichick, it's hard to play for him for 20 years and all that. And then you look at where he went. It's like Bruce Arians is not like Bruce Arians is a hard ass. Like it's not all of a sudden going to become, this easy road or whatever. That's not what he's looking for. But it's different, and that like different set of challenges probably rejuvenates him a bit. And I wonder if part of it was like, hey, if I'm going to play till I'm 45, if I'm going to play till I'm this old, maybe I need something that's just different to help me feel young again. Like even though it's challenging, it makes you feel a little bit younger. I still am pretty dead set that Tampa wasn't the best football fit. And the reason that I think that I'm actually proven right, even though you won the debate in terms of where he ended up, we heard that being on the East Coast and the Eastern time zone was a big reason for this. And they were basically the only team aside from the Patriots that had that option. So if he was moving on, that was the only one. But to me, the Los Angeles Chargers still were the far better offense in terms of what he likes to do. He doesn't throw the ball downfield nearly as frequently as some other quarterbacks. The Chargers had a more diverse group there. They have a better draft asset. So I wouldn't be surprised if he felt the same way and was like, well, because my family's going to be in New York, I've got to go to Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is every single time. I mean, last season we talked about this, right? Like the Chiefs were minus 150 to win the AFC West. And we were like, why the heck is that? They both finished 12-4 a season ago. And we're like, well, it's the Chargers. It's just always the Chargers. I mean, Brady has seen this firsthand. The 2006 Patriots were absolute garbage compared to normal, and the Chargers were 14-2. And Brady throws an interception, and Marlon McCree, instead of just laying down, fumbles and gives them an opportunity to win a playoff game. They fire Marty Schottenheimer after going 14-2 and losing a playoff game. And then it's just over and over and over again. Brady, like 2 years ago, Brady's Patriots were barely favored against the Chargers in the playoffs, and they go and just dump truck them. Tampa Bay, like at least Tampa Bay has the like respect thing, right? Where like Arians is like, look, I'm a cool guy. He can drink Don Perry like with Brady, and like he's got the beret and he, all this kind of stuff. And they're, and the other thing here I think is also true is if Brady, so this is more about Brady not finishing in New England. If Brady fails in Tampa Bay, he's got an out, right? Which is that, Tampa Bay has been terrible this whole time, right? Like I do think that that's another reason why he doesn't want to stay in New England, because if New England were to ever not be good, it would fall on Brady, he's washed up shoulders, right? Whereas if he goes to Tampa Bay, there's sort of enough variables. And I know this is true about LA as well, but there's enough variables where it's like, well, no, I mean, Brady, you can't ask a 43-year-old quarterback to increase the stature of this team that much. And I think like he just made a bet, right? He made a bet that in the AFC, like, you're not even going to probably sniff the AFC West title in LA, whereas in the NFC South, there's a better chance that you might win that division. It's a fun schedule in the sense that you get to play Green Bay, you get to play New Orleans twice, you get to play Matt Ryan twice, all that kind of stuff. And I think that really just played into it. I agree with you that it might not be the best football decision given the schemes and all that, but I think that that's overrated too. We all talk about Arians' scheme, but it's like, of course, Arians isn't going to change his scheme for Jameis. Of course, he isn't going to change his scheme for Carson Palmer. You know what I mean? Kelly Holcomb. Yeah. Like he's going to change his scheme for Brady.
You think so? Because I don't
enough. Yeah, I think so.
I actually don't think the scheme is that big of a deal. I tweeted this out last night, but Brady is the best intermediate thrower of the football, and that's where Bruce Arians' scheme attacks. It's not as if it's just like a bunch of long bombs. Like what he likes to do is hit the 10 to 20 yard range, and Brady's the highest graded quarterback over the last 5 seasons throwing those passes. So that doesn't worry me as much. It's more about the diversity. Like I just don't think they have as good a receiving core all around. They're top tier, Godwin and Evans are much better than what the Chargers have, I think. But overall, I like what the Chargers have a little bit more. The scheme doesn't worry me that much, really, with the whole Arians thing. I just think the Bucs not being the Chargers, in the way that the Chargers always fail, like the Bucs don't even get there because they're just that's just the way the franchise is, right? They just don't even make it to a place where they can have this kind of epic fail. Here's one of the things I was thinking about too is everyone's comparing the Saints and the Chiefs like you just did. What about the rest of that division, though? Are you more afraid of the Raiders and the Broncos, or the Falcons and the Panthers? Like, I think you can make a legit argument that the Falcons and the Panthers are the much better 3 and 4 team compared to the Raiders and the Broncos.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but there's also, up until yesterday, it appeared as though Carolina was tanking, whereas the Raiders and the Broncos are not. And in fact, the Broncos appear to try to be winning now, in the sense that they got Jarrell Casey, acquired AJ Boye for almost nothing as well. Squirtin Sutton's a pretty good receiver. I mean, the fact is the Chargers were last place in that division in 2019. Both Oakland and Denver won 7 games. Kansas City won 12. So it's not like a really, whereas in the NFC South, Panthers stunk, Tampa stunk, and Atlanta stunk, whereas New Orleans just kind of like waltzed their way through. You make a compelling case, but I do think that the AFC West is a little stronger than the NFC South.
Fine. We have some breaking news. We'll get to this in a second. Yeah. We'll get to this in a second. I'm thinking about what Tampa does next and looking at some of the things that they could use some help with. And it's not as if, the Bucs are certainly a talented roster, but I had a couple of things that I am thinking about. First off, their offensive line isn't perfect. Their tackles, they have Donovan Smith at left tackle, but the right tackle is a huge question mark. So do they go out and do they try and sign one of these older tackles who can be kind of had at a bargain to come play tackle for them? Or is that what the 14th pick is for?
That's what the Ford. Yeah.
You think so? Because what if they did this? What if they go out and they sign one of these older tackles, a Whitworth or a Peters or something like that, and then they go, hey, with the 14th pick, what we could really use is a slot receiver, and they go with Justin Jefferson, or maybe Henry Ruggs is still there. I don't know. Why would you not just go all in on being the most explosive offense you possibly could, given that you finally have a quarterback you trust to throw the ball?
Yeah, that's fair, for sure. And it just depends upon how much that tackle costs, right? I mean, we've seen Bulaga cost $10 million a year, which is a good deal, and we've seen George Fant cost $10 million a year, which is a terrible deal. You know what I'm saying? So they'll probably. So the question is could they get Bashad Perriman and a tackle in the draft for less than a high-end tackle and a wide receiver in the draft? Given that they've already sort of played with Perriman before, they know that he has some skills, and the tackle market is sort of like starting pitchers in baseball, where if the guy's a starter, he's being paid an egregious, like Irvin Santana is making $15 million a year, and you're like, God, he sucks. Like George Fant. George Fant just got $10 million a year.
I'm right, and that that's ridiculous.
No self-respecting tackle is going to make less than George Fant at this point.
DJ Humphries got a ridiculous deal. I actually really liked what the Chargers did with Brian Bulaga. And when they made that deal, I sort of thought, is Brady coming to L.A.? Like, this is a nice, veteran move who can come in and if he's healthy, play really well. There's a guy like a Jason Peters or an Andrew Whitworth. Andrew Whitworth in particular, you got to think he's like, man, I was so close. Let me go join Tom Brady, the guy that cost me a Super Bowl ring. I don't know. That would seem to make sense. He would play for a year.
What I think this does do to that 14th pick, though, is take like we've seen Herbert and Love mocked at 13, 14. Now that San Francisco is the carrier of that 13th pick and Tampa Bay has Brady, I really struggle to see how the two quarterbacks go there.
Okay. What about this, though? The Chargers. Are the Chargers now sitting there at 6 being like, we have to make a splash, and they go with Herbert at 6? Or Jordan Love. How amazing would that be?
Yeah, I mean that certainly can happen. If I'm a Chargers fan, I'd hope not, but that certainly could happen. I think that the prop market for number of quarterbacks picked in the top 10 was 3.5, but minus 150 to the under. So minus 250 to the under. I'm sorry, and so it does look like they're at least thinking that one quarterback might be taken in the top 10 after Tua and Burrow, but not two. And that would seem to make sense. What would be? I mean, if you're Tampa, do you think with the depth at tackle and depth at wide receiver in this draft, as well as corner, which is another place that they preferred under new defensive coordinator Todd Bowles, do they move back and allow another team to come up and have an appetite for Love or Herbert?
That would be, I mean, that's what I'm hoping that the Niners do. That's what I think the Niners would be looking to do. And if they can get two guys, right, that's what you need, right? When you have Tom Brady, what have the Patriots done? The Patriots were always built on depth. So you've got to think, hey, if we're going to try and win a Super Bowl here, depth has got to be a primary concern. I mean, they have the superstars on the offensive side of the ball. Is there a move? So, okay, right now, let's say you get an opportunity to take the Saints as not the favorite in the NFC South. Say the Bucs are the favorite. You're going to bet the Saints, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're just better.
Sure, and I feel the same way. Is there anything within reason that the Bucs could do this offseason where you would go, no, the Bucs are supposed to be the favorite in the NFC South?
I don't know. I mean, it's just amounts to putting it together. But the thing is you can't make Brady 5 years younger. Like, to me, if Brady's 5 years younger, you look at that team and you say offensive line's mostly okay, receivers are great, tight end. I mean, we talk about Hunter Henry being awesome, and he is, but O.J. Howard was drafted ahead of him, right. In terms of, like, he should have a higher projected, productivity than Henry. You look at that defense, Devin White, solid. Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett are good pass rushers. Vita Vea is a decent all-around interior player, and they put a decent amount of effort into the secondary. I mean, I guess if you were to tell me that they would go out and get Andrew Whitworth and then Chris Harris, right? Okay, then I would consider them as a maybe co-favorite for the NFC South.
To me, it's Chris Harris. So if you can get Chris Harris and you all of a sudden have the potential to have a truly elite coverage unit, and then with the 14th pick, either you take, a receiver falls to you, or like you just said, you trade down and you get two picks for the price of one. You create that depth there. You pick up a receiver. Maybe there's a slot guy, like maybe Justin Jefferson falls, right? And you all of a sudden have Evans, Godwin, Jefferson, Howard. That, to me, that team is better than the Saints. I think, you've got, sure, I love Sean Payton. Sure, I love Drew Brees. I would have rather had Brady than Brees if I was signing one of those QBs. And so to me, that would put them over the top. The tough thing is, like, you just have no idea how those guys gel together.
Right, exactly. And again, you can't make Brady 5 years younger. Although Brees has his own issues with age. So
Brees is younger, but I think you could make a legit argument that Brady is the more spry of the two. Like, if you had to say, hey, whose body is in better, like, ready to play football for 20 games shape, it's Brady, not Brees, right? Oh,
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've seen less injuries out of Brady over the last decade than we've seen out of Breeze. Breeze missed a game with a shoulder injury in 2015, I want to say, and then he missed the 5 games a season ago. So I do think that might be that might be correct.
I was gonna say that there's no way Brady loses with that Saints team to Kirk Cousins at home, but he did lose at home to Ryan Tannehill,
who was about as Kirk Cousins-y as you get, right?
Exactly, which is scary. Do you think? Did you have any big like Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay? That was something that you would have like gotten laughed out of a bar for a year ago, right? Or even 5 months ago. Is there a big picture takeaway from this where you're like, wow, this is a monumental time for the league?
Man, I would just say that we're in a position now where teams are maybe bailing out on quarterbacks far more quickly. And so let's look at some quote unquote established quarterbacks in the NFL and think to ourselves, okay, this is maybe not as established as we think. Right?
Yeah.
So breaking news you just alluded to, Nick Foles has been traded to the Bears, right? Nick Foles was literally signed to a 4-year, $80-something million deal last year to be the franchise quarterback for the
Jacksonville
Jaguars, right? And so he literally lasts 4 starts, whatever it was. So let's think about this. It is probably not out of the realm of possibility that at this time next year, Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, et cetera, are not playing quarterback for the team they're currently playing for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We look at Tannehill and we're all upset that, I mean, we're not all upset, but we're all basically saying, okay, the Titans are locked in and Kirk Cousins, the Vikings are locked in. But in reality, what we've seen is that no, teams are willing to bail. And then there are always other teams like the Bears that are desperate to trade for a guy like Foles.
I want to say this is the opening up of the NFL where all of a sudden the superstar players are like, we're going to go elsewhere and try new things. And I do think if Brady has like a ton of success in Tampa Bay, it could spur quarterbacks to take a few more chances and to be like, actually, I'm gonna try and work my contracts to be shorter so that I have more freedom to go other places and I'm not like locked into what my team is doing. But I really don't think it's gonna have a big impact, unfortunately. Like who's the next guy on this list? Was it Aaron Rodgers? Is Aaron Rodgers gonna go play for the Chargers in a few years? Like, that's not happening, right?
Well, he's not allowed in the same state as his family for more than like a couple days. So other than playing against the Chargers, it doesn't seem like that's really in the cards.
Yeah.
But no, let's even go back a little further. I made fun of Mountain Time Mitch, Drew Lock today. But like there are other sort of like so Josh Allen, Drew Lock, Mitch Trubisky, right? Mitch Trubisky you've already seen. Josh Rosen's been a player team. So like there are so many franchises I feel like that are less set at the QB position than we thought even 2 years ago.
True.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's really where the league is heading, is that maybe we're going to see more of a musical chairs. The question becomes, does it move to be more like a league like it was 30 years ago, where there are multiple quarterbacks on the same team and coaches will alternate between them? Because that's not really where we're like teams. I think their weakness now is they transition from quarterback to quarterback in the offseason, but are sort of unwilling to during the season. We've only saw, Jacksonville went back to Foles and he was healthy, but then went back to Minshew and Foles sucked. And that to me is like where the next thing is with like Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco and Andy Dalton and folks like that is like, who's going to be the next team that's just going to play quarterback by committee type thing, a quarterback like a hot hand thing, knowing that, if you put all your eggs into one basket at the quarterback position, he might end up being Foles.
So should we move on to this hilarity that is the Chicago Bears? Because we put on our list of things to talk about, like what should the Bears do at quarterback, and Nick Foles was not one of them. So they traded Foles for, what is it, a 4th-round pick?
And it appears that, and they have to pay a salary. It looks like.
Yeah, right. Which was, remember, his salary was, quote, inflated because the Jaguars wanted to make sure he earned respect in the locker room.
Yep, and he earned it.
That salary was going to earn that respect. Now that means that Gardner Minshew is totally screwed, right? Because he doesn't have a big, doesn't have a big payday. So Austin Gale just tweeted out this ridiculous credibility in the locker room garbage that the Jaguars put out. Is this an upgrade over Mitch Trubisky?
I think so. Like Foles.
The fact that you had to think about it though tells you that the Bears were like, we can't bring someone in that'll actually supplant Mitch. We could still eke out the greatness that's in Mitch Trubisky by making it a competition. And that's what this is going to be, because Nick Foles wasn't better than Gardner Minshew last year.
Right.
So, like, I don't know that this is necessarily a huge upgrade.
Well, I think the Bears believe he can be because of the Matt Nagy connection, because Foles played for the Chiefs in 2016. He also played for the Eagles in 2012. Both cases, I believe, Nagy was with Andy Reid. So there is some connection there, and it's sort of like he's kind of making the rounds, much like Chase Daniel, through all like the Reid's coaching tree. But Foles at least gives you, I think, somebody who's got who's got some stones, right? He'll throw the ball downfield. He's got a little bit weirdly of Jameis to him. People like, this sounds really dumb, but people actually do like Nick Foles, right? Like, people respect him in the locker room. Obviously, he won a Super Bowl as a backup quarterback, which is immense. And the Bears have some players that can make plays, right? Unlike Jacksonville, who basically had one player, DJ Chark, who can make plays, and John DeFilippo calling plays. Like, I do think that there's an upgrade for Foles in terms of infrastructure. And all we've seen Mitch in is good infrastructure, and he sucked, So true. I do think that there's a decent chance they upgrade here. It's something. I think the Bears, will probably still compete this year, but not, but it will still ultimately hit their head on the ceiling because neither one of these guys is good enough.
Yeah. I would have said last year, if this move had happened, there's no doubt that Nick Foles is the starting quarterback for the Bears week 1. But I can very easily still see Mitch Trubisky trotting out there week 1 and then having this epic collapse because he knows Nick Foles is waiting in the wings. Foles comes in, and it'll be the same thing we've seen from Nick Foles all along, which is first and second down, he's an average to below average quarterback. And then he goes through these like spurts where all of a sudden on third down, fat Alshon Jeffrey is galloping across the middle of the field. Nick Foles takes a spear to the chest and heaves a dime, and Allen Robinson's going to come down with it. And you'll have like 3 or 4 of those plays. Bears fans will think that, they're going to win the Super Bowl, and that's going to be, and then we're going to have to say, actually, he's not playing that well, and people will hate us again.
But that's the thing. I think that's what the Bears and their fans want, right? The Bears and their fans want another season where they can kind of like, be relevant, give themselves something compelling to watch, and eventually accumulate these Khalil Mack draft picks back, right? I mean, that's really, because if you go into the season with Mitch, your team is going, like, at least now you give Mitch an opportunity to win a job. And so if he beats out Nick Foles, people are going to be like, oh, they're going to have a little optimism there. And if he doesn't, then you have some optimism because change is better than not change type of thing. So I do think from the perspective of like Bears fandoms and the Bears specifically, this makes sense. I just don't. I'd be surprised if they do well, other than the fact that the NFC is probably going to be a little down. Like Minnesota is going to stink, Detroit's probably going to stink, and the Packers are not as good as I think their 13-3 record was a season ago. Sorry, Aaron.
Well,
you know,
the real what this should highlight is how bad it is to trade first-round picks for a star defensive player when you don't know about your quarterback. And one of the things that we were told consistently by everyone was, oh, it doesn't matter. If you have a young quarterback, you've just got to go all in. And the response is, being young does not make you great, right? And Mitch Trubisky showed no signs of being great, right? He didn't even have like one season or 3 games or 5 games. He didn't even have a Sam Darnold end of the season of being great, right? And we saw that Sam Darnold came back to earth super quickly. So when you go make that huge investment, you're now sitting here at a time where you'd probably love an opportunity to have a first-round pick, right, where you could make a move in a quarterback direction.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't. And so then you end up with Nick Foles, right? You have Khalil Mack, and you've got Khalil Mack you invested 2 first-round picks and a ton of money for, and your quarterback is a journeyman.
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit of more breaking news that might shed light on why Brady decided not to go to the Chargers. The Chargers have signed Linval Joseph to a 2-year, $17 million deal. At least they can stop the run now, George.
This tells you that Cam Newton is on his way to the Los Angeles Chargers. You can just see this coming from a mile away. They're going to run the ball, 57% of the time. It's going to be Cam Newton power. He's going to overthrow poor little short Austin Eckler on like 15 swing passes over the course of the season. It's going to be brutal to watch. And Linval Joseph's going to stuff the run. What a terrible – oh, man. They are so confusing. What do you think happens to Cam Newton?
Well, I was going to say Bears, but now – okay, let's run this down a little bit. Where are the starting positions? Where are the starting quarterback positions still open? Because I think that there's some confusion here. There's New England, right?
Yep.
Los Angeles Chargers.
Correct.
Now, Cincinnati nominally.
Miami, sort of.
Right? So those are the places where Newton could go. I think among those, it's probably still best for him to go to the Chargers.
I think it's I almost feel like it's Chargers or bust.
Do you think New England would tolerate his sort of inaccuracy? Is really a question. Because take Jameis here. Jameis
there
is
are
not
2
accurate.
things.
Jameis throws picks. That's his issue.
I'm going to tell you 2 things about Cam Newton that the Patriots are not putting up with. His inaccuracy from a throwing the football down the field perspective, and inaccuracy from I show up to the stadium in a fucking costume every time. Like, the Patriot way is over here, and Cam Newton is over here. Like, that is just not, I'm just telling you right now, that's not going to work. I would see Jameis Winston actually fitting in kind of nicely with, like, Jameis Winston, by all accounts, is a guy that works pretty darn hard, is a student of the game, all those things, and probably would fit better with the football side of the Patriot way for the Patriots, in the locker room kind of deal. On the field is a totally different story. I don't think that the Miami Dolphins are in a space where they should be like, let me take a shot on a guy who was an MVP, 4 years ago and hope he comes. That's not what they're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
They're not trying to rejuvenate Cam Newton's career right now. So I really think it's Chargers or bust. And for the Chargers, they're sitting there going, do we want Justin Herbert putting people in the seats or Cam Newton?
Right. Well, And the thing is Herbert. I mean, Herbert's just not an inspiring character, right? Like Tua, I think, is an inspiring character. Burrow, Herbert just doesn't. I mean, like, if my team drafts Justin Herbert, I don't know, man. I'm kind of like I'm gonna kind of sell a little bit. I think if I'm in the excitement business, right? So
True.
Newton might actually be able to sell some excitement, and to me that's worth a decent amount. Here's a team, and I think we talked about this internally. What about Buffalo? Like, Buffalo's certainly not a place where a superstar like Newton could go, but Buffalo is a place where a player like Jameis Winston could go.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're Jameis Winston and you have no chance at
which to
job.
Me is unreal when you lead the league in passing yards.
Okay, but
and throw 30. I mean, yes, he threw 30 picks, but like that's noise, right? I mean, like Phillip Rivers has more 20 interception seasons than Winston does.
True. Here's what I think about Winston, and I actually think this makes a lot of sense. If the Miami Dolphins are sitting there and they're going, how can we talked about this yesterday as well. How can we play both sides? How can we play hey, let's bring a guy in who just maybe still we don't know enough about, but at the same time, we're still in a spot where we haven't invested too much. We could still tank. Jameis Winston is that guy. And the Dolphins, you talked about this. The Dolphins are not that far away. Like, the Dolphins with Jameis Winston, okay, I'm just going to say it right now. The Dolphins with Jameis Winston, I think, would win that division.
Okay. I don't hate it.
They have the 5th pick.
They also have Devontae Parker, who's like a Jameis receiver.
Yes. What if? Okay, so think about this. What if they take Jameis, and all of a sudden a team falls in love with Justin Herbert, has to get in front of the Chargers. They can trade pick 5. They can get like 5 first-round picks.
That's what. Yeah.
They just signed Byron Jones. I'm gonna go bet on it right now, I think.
So that defense now has Kyle Van Noy, Byron Jones. They got rid of Rashad Jones. But yeah, I mean they have some talent, right?
Absolutely. And they were so abysmal defensively, and that's going to regress.
Plus Fitzpatrick and Jameis are like boys, right? Like they played for the same team for like 2 years.
So I don't know. It seems to make too much sense that the Miami Dolphins would have Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston a couple seasons after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had both of those guys.
I would buy an aqua blue, aqua whatever color that is, Jameis Winston jersey if he went to the Dolphins.
You would have to. And you have to wear it
every
every single Sunday.
I mean, you'd love to see it. Maybe Neil would become a Dolphins fan again.
God, you and Neil both rooting for Jameis Winston would be pretty intolerable. To me, that's how it has to end up. The Chargers probably can wait for Cam Newton or trade like a 5th-round pick if even they need to trade that for him because there's no leverage anymore. He goes to Los Angeles. The Chargers do this weird try-to-win-now thing that flames out massively because Cam Newton's not a very accurate thrower of the football, and the strength of that team is their receivers. And then Jameis goes to Miami, and the Miami Dolphins go from worst to first in that division.
Here's another thought I had, which won't happen because it seems like there's an irrational love for a former BYU quarterback, not named Steve Young, not named Jim McMahon, not named Ty Detmer.
I see where you're going.
I think New Orleans is a great destination for one of these quarterbacks who is not going to get a starting spot.
Jameis?
But, I mean, maybe not Jameis, but like I don't know. Think about it. Yeah. Like what if Jameis went there?
Yeah.
It's at some point in time, this like Breeze is going to get hurt and miss 2 games, and they're going to have to lean on Taysom Hill to play every snap for 2 games, and he's going to implode. And at that point, maybe it's not this offseason, maybe it's the next offseason, but like I could see one of these, like let's say Josh Allen, Mitch Trubisky, one of these failed first round picks will go and be a backup for Sean Payton and possibly like become good, or just like try to revive their career under his tutelage. Like I think like that's a sneaky spot now that Bridgewater's gone.
Yeah, I that is a really good call. I'm trying to think of other places where a backup would have.
I mean, Dallas is another one. It's not clear that Dak is going to be able to agree to a long-term deal.
What if he just went back to Tampa Bay and learned under Tom Brady? And like all of a sudden in 2 years he could be like, you know what? I threw 30 interceptions, and then Tom taught me how to avoid the interception. People would buy into that so quickly.
I don't hate that. I mean, yeah. I think that is our cue to move on to different positions.
Okay.
At this point.
Here's what I was going to ask you to talk about some moves that haven't happened yet. Like there's a few players out there that can still be had. We talked about Chris Harris Jr. There's obviously Jadeveon Clowney, who hilariously has not been signed to like a monster deal yet, despite that huge hit that he had at Michigan. That of course is still that's still like the main reason people like Jadeveon Clowney.
Jadeveon Clowney and Gautier, one hit wonders.
Gautier is on a different level than Jadeveon Clowney. That song will live forever. Robbie Anderson. So like if you're thinking about one, Emmanuel Sanders still out there, a move that hasn't happened yet, where you go maybe in January this matters.
Well, we've had Robbie Anderson to, I think like the Bengals was one we talked about, although they spend a ton of money on Trey Waynes and DJ Reader. So maybe that's not in the cards. Baltimore might be another spot. We said Bashad Perriman's going to be a player that I think is going to help a team. And he thus far has not been signed, I don't think. So, kind of all, a lot of wide receivers. Like people are, I think, overreacting to how good the wide receiver draft class is
by not signing these guys
and not signing. Yeah, like somebody was rumoring that the Vikings would trade Anthony Harris to move up from 22 to 10, and I'm like, do you really think that the difference between T. Higgins and CeeDee Lamb is that big? Like, all these people are like super sure about this receiving draft, and I'm like, so you guys are kind of overstepping your bounds. Like wouldn't you rather? I mean, Robbie Anderson's going to be more of a sure thing, I think, than any of these draft picks, right? Yeah. Maybe not as high upside, but more of a sure thing. Sanders very much as well. Perriman too, at what they're going to be asked to do. It just seems to me like, they're taking the wide receiver draft class way too seriously. So, I mean, I could see, like, obviously the Ravens have made some moves here. Maybe one more for somebody like Anderson would be one that I would expect relatively soon.
Yes, I like what the Ravens have done so far, and that was one that I think sticks out. Another one would be the Vikings, who just traded away their best receiver and
they don't have
a
any
chance. Yeah, that's true. But maybe they can get one of these guys on a pretty small deal, given that there's not a ton of interest out there. Chris Harris Jr. to the Buccaneers makes a ton of sense. Here's a move that has nothing to do with free agents, and I was just curious. You know how many years Deshaun Watson has left on his deal?
Well, no, he's going into year 4, right? So he has a year plus the possibility of they're obviously going to 5th-year option him.
Yes.
If he makes it that far.
What what would it take if the Dolphins go, hey, Deshaun, maybe go into GM Bill O'Brien's office and tell him, the whole thing you did with trading away my number one.
Well, no, he doesn't even have to do that. He doesn't even have to ask for a trade. He just has to walk in and say, hey, man, here's my one kid's mom. Here's my other kid's mom. And here's my third kid's mom. And by the time he finishes that third phrase, he's out of there. He's going to the Dolphins for the 36th pick or whatever they have in the second round.
I'm just saying, we talked about how we don't think Brady leaving is like some macro, power move, and I don't think it is. But Deshaun Watson saying, screw this, I'm out of here, that would be a power move. I actually think Deshaun Watson has the clout, like everyone respects him so much that if he came out and was just like, no, like screw this, I want out of here, I do not think it would hurt his image. People would try to disparage it, but I don't think it would, and that would really, I think, set the league on edge.
Here's a question, because Bill O'Brien, and Bill O'Brien's a fan of us, and obviously a client, and we don't like to say bad things about these people all the time. But there's, with the news that came out today, there's a significant chance that he might not be retained as the GM and head coach of the Houston Texans, right? There's a legitimate shot that might be the case. If you were to take over the Houston Texans, what would be the quickest way to contention now that, other than pushing the dump button on the trade of Hopkins, right? Which is what I would do, but you can't probably. Would it be to trade Watson to the Dolphins for 2 of the first round picks this year and just start completely over and say to yourself, look, like I have, be like John Lynch and say, I have a 5-year contract and my coach has a 5-year contract and we're just starting over?
I don't.
Or is it to let it ride with Watson, who's good enough and, actually very good, right? And he has some faults. He's probably not a top 5 guy, but very good. Like, those are your 2 options. And I do think that there's a probability that first set of circumstances is the right choice. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it's not something I'd laugh off.
And I'm not laughing it off, but the risk. So you already have a quarterback. I believe that you can win a Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson. Mm-hmm. So if I have a quarterback where I go, I can win a Super Bowl, and I'm not one of those guys that's like, I can win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. I'm not fucking delusional, right? But if I have a guy where he's capable of being a top 5 guy in any given year, and that's kind of what you need, right, to have a legit shot at the Super Bowl, then I'm not trading him. I think the moves would be, right now, I would be thinking, how much depth can I get on this team, right? How much depth can I put in my defensive backfield? There's a lot of bargain wide receivers here. I'm going to go sign one. I'm going to draft one. I'm not going to be in a situation where Will Fuller goes down and that tanks my entire offense.
Right.
And I'm going to work on establishing a quick passing game that helps take some of the hits away from Deshaun Watson, because, hey, guess what? We might not be contending this year because I just traded away a top 3 fucking receiver in the game.
Right.
And you're totally right. Like, the tough thing about this is, by all the measurements that we have mathematically, that was an absolutely unforgivable trade. Bill O'Brien, by all accounts, on Hard Knocks, right, is like a nice guy, does a lot of great things, cares about his family and all these things. So it's hard to disparage a guy like that. And it seems like DeAndre Hopkins kind of said, hey, that conversation getting a little overblown. So I'm not even going to worry about the conversation he had with DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah,
I'm going to say this. When it first came out, I originally thought to myself, this is in a stupid, perverted way, a way to save face for making a really stupid football decision. You see what I'm saying? Like, yeah. if you can spread the blame, hey, look, I'm partly a dumb football guy and I'm partly a dumb, like, interaction with other humans guy, then maybe like you share the wealth of like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Like that was my original thought was like, oh, you're deflecting from, you know, this one decision. It does look like so Ian Rappaport's reporting right now, by the way, speaking of quarterbacks, Tyrod Taylor will be the starter for the Chargers in 2020.
Wow. So that whole segment, we'll just have to cut that whole segment.
Well, no, it's fun discussion.
Yeah. Wow. So do you think, okay, so if they say that, then what they're doing is they're saying, hey, look, they're letting the whole league know we're not going after Cam Newton.
We're holding the point of attack with Linval Joseph.
Are they also trying to say that they're not taking a quarterback at that pick? Because you've said this a ton, right? All of these signs are pointing to no one likes Justin Herbert that much. No one likes Jordan Love that much.
I think this is the exact opposite.
Okay, that's what I think too.
Okay. I think this is because Taylor was the Browns quarterback when they took Mayfield.
Yeah,
you know, and Taylor. So I think this is more of okay, we're going to select a QB but if they don't like either guy, they could also say, come and get that pick then and give us some more picks. Because I don't think Herbert or Love are any good, but I also don't think they're that much different than each other. So like if somebody comes up to 6 and gets Herbert and you get the 11th pick and you take Love, there's not really much of a difference except for the fact that you got some value by virtue of moving back.
Okay. Can I say something here?
Yep.
I think the Chargers can compete with Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor, where have we seen Tyrod Taylor play football?
Buffalo. It's terrible.
Okay. Buffalo with who at receiver?
Zay Jones.
Okay. We saw poor Tyrod Taylor try and play with a totally terrible Buffalo Bills offense. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't awful. It wasn't great either, right? He doesn't have a ton of accuracy, but he didn't have an opportunity to like show off his skills, right? Then he goes to Cleveland. Dumpster fire. Okay. So far we have Buffalo with nothing, Cleveland on fire, and then he goes to Los Angeles. This is by far the most talented receiving core that he'll have ever played with by miles. They have a poor offensive line, but he's one of the guys that could actually get away from some of that pressure and scramble for positive yardage. He also has guys that can attack each level of the field. Like, to me, this might be them saying, we've seen this guy do it in practice for a while. We're going to give him a shot.
Well, and the fact is with this coronavirus situation, they're not going to get in a lot of off season. So if they bring in a new player, like there's a good chance he's not going to be able to acclimate fast enough. And so, and the similar thing with Foles and Nagy and those guys, like there's some value, I think, in familiarity.
No, and he was not, I need to pull up the numbers for this, and I will after this, but he threw the ball deep, not very well. Like that was, if I remember correctly, he was more accurate in that intermediate range. Yeah. Right. More accurate in that kind of the short areas of the field, and that's where like Keenan Allen owns that space. Like he's gonna have a guy that's always open, and to me that could be a huge difference for this guy. I'm not sure this isn't just a really shrewd move on accident happening for the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't know. I'm kind of excited. I'm bullish.
Well, they're not. I mean, we make fun of the Joseph move, but they've made a decent number of plays in this offseason so far to, I think, stabilize the franchise. Sort of ask yourself, because honestly, the issue when you have a franchise quarterback that's been there forever is to figure out how much of the team depended on that guy, right? You look at Big Ben in Pittsburgh. We found out a season ago that, that team can win 8 games without him, right? They're not that like. Whereas with Rivers, it's like that team oscillated up and down. We think Rivers is brilliant. He's probably going to make the Hall of Fame, but like, how much did that, it might be good for this franchise to play a season out without, play a season without him and with sort of more of a caretaker quarterback and find out really what they have.
I don't think this is a given that they now go quarterback round one. All right, let's finish this out with some quick teams that so far we like the moves they've made on balance, and ones that we really dislike. I will go first here. My big winners are as follows: the Cardinals, the 49ers, the Bills, and I also put the Patriots down here because I don't think it's nearly as bad for the Patriots as people want to make it out to be. I think they're going full tank mode.
And you have to at some point, right? I mean, there's really no. The transition was never going to be smooth, right? After the Garoppolo left, there was never really a natural transition, and so this is probably the best course of action for them to take. I agree with all of those. The only one that's a little worrisome for me is Buffalo, because they can solve all the problems, and until they solve quarterback, it's never going to be a fully containable thing. But yeah, I don't hate that. All right, let me think for. I kind of like what Cleveland's doing.
Really?
I kind of like.
Tell me, because they were up on my list of losers.
Well, so I like the Luan signing.
Okay.
I like letting Schobert go. I like letting Kirksey go because linebackers don't matter that much. I like not.
You mean Conklin, right?
Conklin. Sorry, I keep saying Luan when I mean Conklin. So, yeah, and offensive line was a spot where we had them mocked at tackle at 10, and I still think tackle is probably a position for them to go with as I look at doing that. But they're not making these like huge splashes in free agency other than that, and I think that's good. I don't think they did trade for a fullback, which is a little bit troublesome.
Yes.
But as far as like putting some players around Austin Hooper as well. Like, I think that they're at least like taking Mayfield on his rookie deal and saying to him, okay, like we're going to at least, we're going to try to puff you up here a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. I think that Austin Hooper for that is just like, it's like burning money. And I am always wary of teams that do that, where it's like, okay, I get that it's not a lot of money in a vacuum, but it's just stupid. It's like, don't pay Austin Hooper a run-of-the-mill tight end, top of the league tight end money. That's just stupid.
But tight end is not a position where there's not 32 starting tight ends in the NFL. I think that's the tricky part, is that and that offense is a 21 personnel offense that throws the ball to the middle of the field to that player. And that, to me, like, that's why overpaying for Hooper, and I agree that it's an overpay, but if your offense is going to require a tight end or two, it's not the worst deal I've ever seen, especially with Conklin there to sort of help out. I thought he was relatively cheap for what they could have ended up paying for him, given what Fant and all these other guys got.
Sure, I liked the Conklin signing, even though there are some red flags there. Here are my biggest losers: the Houston Texans, the Minnesota Vikings, the Tennessee Titans, and the Indianapolis Colts. Any of those that you really disagree with?
No, I think the Minnesota Vikings are one of the most perplexing teams in the NFL right now. They're only going to get worse with the signing of Dalvin Cook and the trading of Anthony Harris, which appears to be happening relatively soon. It makes zero sense. I would say another, those are good. Those are good names. I'm trying to think of another team that could have used some help. Yeah, I think the New York Jets overpaying for George Fant, re-signing Brian Poole after one good year, despite what we know about coverage. But the team to me that like really failed is the Bengals.
Oh, interesting.
Like Trey Wayne's getting the same contract as Marcus Peters is an absolute overpay. DJ Reader making $12 million a year to be kind of a fat nose tackle who's like kind of like a poor man's Linval Joseph is again not a good move. The fact that they had to franchise tag AJ Green and couldn't resolve something with him is a troublesome one. And it doesn't look like so far that they've gotten any better on the offensive line. So that, to me, I think the hometown Bengals deserve a little bit of ripping.
Okay, there you go. We will be back tomorrow. Our normally scheduled podcast. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll do all the normal stuff. I've got some fun working out during quarantine stories for you.
Same. Actually, It's raining cats and dogs in Cincinnati right now. So
okay, it was raining in Palm Springs this morning. So we're like brothers today. Anyways, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Eric, stay safe. Nice.
The Bengals, man.
It was fun that so many things happened while we were doing